ESG, or as we refer to it in more detail, environmental, social, and governance issues, have been around for a while. And is important. Some people may describe it as a fad. There's some speculation towards that. And I'm joined today by Janina Slawski, Head of Investment Consulting at Alexforbes, to unpack some of that for us. Janina, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So let it rip. Tell us, give us the good, the bad, and the ugly on this.
Well, I quite liked the comment about, is ESG just a fad? Because my answer would be yes and no.
Right.
So essentially, yes, ESG has been around for a while, and fundamentally, it is a brilliant concept. It talks to a very multidimensional view of the world and does take into account externalities. We're not just focused on investment returns, shareholders, etc. We're really trying to do something that's going to be better for the future world, which all of us should be able to align behind. But the reality is it's not easy to measure. So a big challenge we have is that data gives very different outcomes. So if you look at the same company being rated by different providers, you get very, very different results across E, S, and G, as well as total scores. So this is impossible. I mean, is this a good company or is it a bad company, even just within one of the sectors, which should be more comparable? So we do have to understand that that's a challenge, and it's not that they're fudging data, it is difficult. But if you're fundamentally looking at it and saying, we're trying to do the right thing, you look at the data, you try to make good investments. But unfortunately, once you've got the data, you can also start having what's called greenwashing, where people are essentially trying to design portfolios that look better, but actually are not fundamentally trying to make a positive impact. So when I say there's potentially a fad, there is that element. And you've probably read a lot of stories internationally about regulators cracking down and saying you actually have to have something fundamentally that's focused on ESG in order for it to count within the green space. The other issue is that you want to focus on the long term, and that does make sense. But big question which my clients ask is, but is it right to do an investment which potentially isn't fantastic from an ESG perspective, but gives fantastic results in the short term? And the reality is, I mean, for a lot of our investors, they're retail investors or they're members of retirement funds who are trying to put money away for retirement, or they are in retirement and they're trying to have a living annuity and actually live off the money from their retirement. For them, you actually have to try and do the best for them. Tegela is a great example. Obviously, Anglo was saying we want to look more green. So obvious way to do that is disinvest from coal. Not necessarily great for the planet because you haven't changed anything. Tegela in the short term did amazingly well. So a lot of people are very skeptical as to whether it was the right decision and is it actually a responsible investment. But for the first 12 months and more, it gave fantastic returns. So generally, we're trying to get that perspective that says, first of all, it's complex. There will be times when you actually do want your asset managers to invest into these types of shares because it is the great investment return that your investors need. But you also want them to be doing that overlay that says, although I'm investing and I've got this concern that this isn't necessarily the right investment for the long term, I actually am going to engage rather than disinvest. Stay invested, meet with management, use my proxy, and ultimately work with that company to deliver a better outcome. And then you've got the best of both worlds. Right. You've got a good short-term return, but you're also trying to make the difference in the long term, which is when we will definitely have issues arising if we don't be responsible investors now. So ESG is just this massive complexity, and anyone who says it isn't complex either doesn't understand or is trying to do some tick boxes or greenwashing. And it's actually an amazing conversation. Since the beginning of sort of ESG, responsible investing, moving into impact investing, we find it's the most interesting conversations we have with our clients as well as with asset managers because of the deep insights and the fact that you are trying to create something better, get great investment returns, and essentially deliver something that's going to be better for our children and our children's children. So great topic to have, and definitely not a fad, but obviously there are aspects of it that do look a bit faddish at some stage.
Thanks, Janina. That's quite interesting. Is it true that you have to give up returns to bring ESG into the equation or not?
We all hope in the long term that ESG will actually add value, because it does lead to better governance, better decision making, capital allocation, etc. But obviously there will be times of pain, and in fact, very interesting conversations with clients, particularly in the last couple of years. I think we all would be comfortable with the fact that we shouldn't invest into weapons and oil and gas, because those are irresponsible things, and therefore you don't want them in your portfolios. You can imagine how happy clients were when Russia invaded Ukraine, and suddenly weapons, oil, gas, scarce, dramatic issues in terms of supply chains, the returns on those shares shot up and everything else looked in the doldrums. So a lot of very heavily ESG focused investments did really, really badly. And there's nothing to test a client's commitment to ESG than having to live through a period like that, where they're getting such poor investment returns. So again, interesting conversation. Obviously, we think that there's positives that will come out, that Europe will be less reliant on gas. They'll move more towards renewals, so that'll be a positive. And obviously, investing in that will give a long-term better return. The weapons is a bit more challenging. We always talk about sustainability, but I guess we've never thought that if you are a country that's got or lives in a bad neighborhood, shall we say, maybe having weapons allows you to be sustainable and do the better thing for your communities and people. So it's interesting conversations that have come out that essentially have led to different perspectives. But fundamentally, we do think you'll get better returns in the long term. But in the short term, there will be periods of pain. Clients really need to understand what they've invested in to work through those periods.
100%. Thank you. That was quite interesting. You certainly answered the question. And it's certainly something I think that will remain important in the investment industry for many years to come going forward. So we're probably going to have to re-engage on this conversation a few times, and I certainly look forward to that. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. It's great.
100%.